In the late 1970s, a guy named Robert K. Graham had a little idea to create the perfect baby. So, a little background on Robert. He was a millionaire who had made a ton of money by inventing impact-resistant plastic eyeglasses. Good for you, Robert. Good for you. It's kind of like those infomercials where the car drives over glasses to prove like how unbreakable they are. It's like that, but like Robert invented that, you know? Like, well, I can run my car over the glasses and they don't break. Oh, I'm gonna need to buy that shit right now. They're important, I guess. Yeah, okay. Even with all this success, Robert was kind of a pessimistic person. Like, he didn't think humanity was headed in a great direction because, according to him, Darwin's theory of natural selection had stopped working on the human race. Eventually, he didn't think that we were evolving anymore, at least not in a good way. And Robert believed that when humans became the dominant species and, quote, masters of our environment, it created a kind of cheat code. Instead of survival of the fittest, modern living allowed retrograde humans, aka dummies, to reproduce and live comfortably. That's kind of the nice thing about living in a society. You don't have to go out and like kill a bison when you're hungry. You can order Postmates. Robert, he's dead now, but I bet you the Postmates would really piss him off extra hard, I'm sure. Essentially, Robert worried that all these dummies who should not be surviving and procreating were out there making sexuals. He also believed that all the smart, beautiful, genetically gifted people weren't having enough babies to offset the number of dummies. Maybe this is why Robert had 8 kids. I don't know. Probably. You know, he thinks he's special. Everyone always thinks their kids are like the best. Ultimately, Robert believed that idiots having idiot babies would destroy the human race if something wasn't done to stop it. So Robert decided the future of humanity was in his hands, and there was only one way to save it from becoming stupid. He was like, why don't we take the best of the best, valedictorians and like rocket scientists, and have them create a super race of genius humans? Idea. I know. I was thinking about this, and it sounds like a stoner thought you would have in the shower. A hypothetical situation, but Robert actually put this plan into action. Yeah, he did. He comes up with an idea for a VIP sperm bank. So Graham gets an idea for a sperm bank for designer babies. He actually got the idea from someone else, a man named Hermann Muller. Now, Hermann won the Nobel Prize in 1946 for his work on genetic mutations. Fun fact, Hermann actually tried to recruit Joseph Stalin to be his sperm donor. Which I was like, why? Like, didn't Stalin have really bad skin and didn't he have like a sad arm and like a limp or something? And he was short and not that great in life. You know? Okay. Anyway, instead of calling it a sperm bank, Robert calls his project the Repository for Germinal Choice. Yeah, well, I know. I was like, what? I don't know. It was based in California, Southern California, so that's great. Repository sounds a little bit more sophisticated, like a sperm bank that went to an Ivy League college, you know? And that was part of the plan. Not just anyone could donate their sperm. What made the repository different was that only the cream of the crop of society could cream their crop into a sperm cup and then donate their sperm. The goal was to create creative, intelligent people who otherwise might not be born. Robert said his little spank bank, quote, may stimulate humanity's ascent to a new level of being, end quote. So Robert starts going after geniuses. And in the late 1970s, he finally convinced 3 Nobel Prize winning scientists to donate their sperm. And I know what you might be thinking. Where is he getting the women for this little experiment? Well, he started advertising to potential mothers in Mensa magazine. If you don't know, Mensa is this club that you can basically only join if your IQ is at a certain level. Like, you gotta be really smart, like, best of the best. But it's kind of funny because in Spanish, doesn't menso mean like idiot or stupid or something like that? Let me know down below. I know you know. He obviously couldn't name names, but the ads would say things like, quote, Mr. Fuchsia, an Olympic gold medalist, tall, dark, handsome, bright, a successful businessman and author. And you're reading this like, would bang, you know? Okay, all right. But no one really knew like what Robert was up to unless you had a subscription to Mensa magazine or you were one of the people jizzing into a cup. That is, until 1980. So that year, the LA Times did a story on the repository. This was the first time society was hearing about it, and they were shocked and offended. How could this be going on? And I never knew about it. And why, like, didn't anyone ask me for my sperm? You know? This whole idea of creating the ideal race made people think of the Nazis. For good reason, right? So people were like, oh my God, this is eugenics all over again. To them, it was essentially the same idea Hitler had when he wanted to exterminate the Jewish people because he believed that they had negative traits and needed to be eliminated. So understandably, people were freaked out. 2 of the Nobel Prize winning donors pulled out altogether. They were like, nope. And people started accusing Robert of trying to create a master race. I mean, they're kind of not wrong, right? And this is when people started saying that he was trying to make designer babies. So that's where the phrase actually comes from. Now, at the end of the day, only one Nobel Prize winner ever admitted that he had donated sperm to the repository, and his name was William Shockley. And he invented something called a transistor. Transistors are electronic components, like, it's smart people shit. You know, you have transistors in your computer right now, like 1 billion of them or something like that. So he was smart. All right. Downside, William was a big-time racist. Yep. He believed that black people were, quote, intellectually inferior to white people. Oh, God. And he actually took it a step further, saying that people who were inferior should be offered cash and prizes in exchange for getting sterilized. Yeah. So basically, Robert only had one guy in his corner, and it was this guy, William. So it was not the best PR. Fun fact, William Shockley only decided to stop providing samples to the repository when he decided he was too old to be giving them good quality samples. Apparently, this really bummed out the repository director, who later said that Shockley's sperm was, quote, actually pretty good, end quote. Direct quote. Actually pretty good. Anyway, long story short, Robert was losing his credibility. People assumed his whole project was an evil racist plot. Protesters started picketing outside his home, and Robert even decided to hire security guards, not for his house, but for the repository, you know, to protect his genius sperm. Priorities. Robert sort of retreats from the public eye, and eventually people forget like all about him. But guess what? Some women still impregnated themselves with genius, quote-unquote genius babies. And the first baby from this bunch was born in 1982, and it was on the cover of the most important magazine at the time, the National Enquirer. Remember the National Enquirer? I think it's still out there. I'm not sure. I don't know, but you remember. Maybe you don't. Maybe you do. Anyway, I could see like a couple women being into this idea, you know, right? But it wasn't just 1 or 2 women. Oh, nay. So the genius babies start popping out left and right. Boom, boom, boof. Over the next 15 years, 229 genius babies were born from the samples at the repository for germinal choice. 229. That's a lot of babies. These babies were scattered all over the United States, as well as half a dozen other countries. So Robert considered this whole thing to be like a fun experiment. He even had the parents agree to answer periodic surveys about the kids and like how they were excelling in life. You know, little life updates. Now, the funny thing is, Robert Graham's own biological son, his name was Robin, Robin said that his dad seemed to prefer the designer babies over his own kids. Apparently, Robert used to cover his office walls with snapshots of his Genius Sperm Bank kids. I mean, I guess they were his pride and joy. On the other hand, Robin called his dad aloof towards his actual kids. According to Slate, one mother said that she always considered Robert Graham to be the real father of her children, not the guy who donated the sperm. I know, I was like, that's so weird. Like, why would you say that? That doesn't make any sense. She probably didn't have a man in her life, right? Apparently, at some point, Robert decided that most of the donors were too old to be considered good donors, so he started relying on younger scientists for his jizz jar. And this is where Paul Smith enters the picture. Paul's back there with his Hustler magazine. He's donating his sperm. If anyone wants it, I'll put it up on eBay. Let me know. He's smart, handsome. He's got a good head of hair. Went to college, community college. Nothing wrong with that. He wanted to go to a 4-year after he finished 2 years at the community college. I think that was smart, Paul. That was a really good, smart choice. He didn't really do much with his life, then he died. But I think he'd be a good candidate if anyone's out there looking for sperm. So Paul, not this one, but Paul Smith, was the first director of the repository for germinal choice. First director. Okay, got it. He's one of the only people who knew what happened there, and he's essentially the only person who has talked publicly about it. So after all of the Nobel Prize winners distanced themselves from Robert, Smith says that he went to go look for donors at bougie college campuses. Not terrible idea. I understand the logic there, but there's some dumbasses at bougie colleges, because their parents got them in somehow, whatever. He was essentially trying to predict who the next Nobel Prize winners would be. So Paul Smith would stake out college campuses with good reputations in California, like UC Berkeley and Caltech, and try to find the most high-achieving scientists and grad students, and then go up to them and ask for a little donation. I know, is this the best idea? I don't know. When you think about it, the Unabomber got into Harvard at 15 years old. A murderer called the Roadside Strangler went to Cornell. I'm sure there's lots of other murderers at colleges right now. Anywho, brains weren't even enough. The women who were interested in the repository started asking questions about how attractive the donors were. Fair question. You don't want your baby looking busted. Ugh. He's smart, but ugh, I don't want to look at him. So Paul started patrolling college campuses looking for hotties. Paul estimates that he approached about 100 men total, and only 10 ended up donating. That's because the repository didn't pay the donors. What's the incentive there, really? Plus, what if the kid finds you later in life and you're like, oh shit, you were just a donation? Now, there's a reason people saw this as one big nasty eugenics project. First, according to Paul, all of the repository's donors were white. They were white. And second, for women to apply to get the sperm, they had to be married and heterosexual. In 1997, Robert Graham died. He had been completely self-funding the repository, and I guess after he passed, he assumed his wife would keep running it. But I guess she, the wife, decided she had better things to do with her money. Because just 2 years later, in 1999, the repository for germinal choice shut down. And this was good news to all the people who saw it as a creepy, racist experiment. Now, at the same time, the people who worked at the repository had helped some of the moms anonymously chat with the donors. But when it closed, all of the records just disappeared. And this was sad news for the genius kids who had been born out of this project, because now they had zero chance of ever connecting with their bio dads or any half siblings. Well, there's ancestry and stuff like that, but still. Apparently, California state law doesn't require sperm banks to keep records or release any info to the mothers. So now it's completely up to them and any journalists or people like us to find out what happened. David Plotz, who is a writer and co-founded Atlas Obscura, decided he wanted to track down the genius children that came from the repository. And he actually managed to find almost 30 of them. Ooh. I'm like, okay, are they running the world? What are they doing now? Well, according to David, quote, to answer the obvious question, no, they are not all geniuses. Sure, there's this boy, his name was Sam. Sounds fake, but I guess. At the time, he was 14, doing college math, and was said to be a great athlete. There was a girl, her name was Joy. She got straight A's. She was the lead in the Nutcracker and played a bunch of like musical instruments. Cool. But according to David, the rest of the kids were pretty average. He said, quote, "Most are very good students, and some are quite mediocre." Womp womp. David completely disagrees with Robert Graham's theory that better genes equals better babies. Even after meeting all these kids, he went to the BBC and said, quote, "It matters more what one chooses to do with one's intelligence," end quote. So simply just being smart isn't enough. Essentially, make good choices. It's easier than tracking down genius sperm. Of course, some kids have more money and access to things, so, they're going to have a better chance at excelling.